Well, hello again. It's very nice to see you all. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and thank you for those who have subscribed to the channel. And thank you for all the questions that have come in on postcards. First one I'm going to deal with today is from Mrs. Viney of Dorset, who wanted to know what a helminthologist is. Well, a helminth is a parasitic worm, and a helminthologist is somebody who studies them, and that's what I do as my day job. I'm a helminthologist. And if you listen to my organ playing, you know why helminthology is my day job and not organ playing. So thank you, Mrs. Viney from Dorset. So what I thought I would do today is play two new pieces of music, and these are pieces by Jeanne Demessieux. And so this is more modern music. Demessieux was born in 1921, died in 1968, so died young. And she was Parisian, and she was the organist at La Madeleine in Paris. And she was the organist there, but she also wrote a lot of organ music. And French organs by this stage had developed a bit of a tonal difference and some mechanical differences as well. And of course, this has influenced the music that she's written. And because the music is relatively modern, of course, the whole tonal language, the whole harmonic language is rather different than the Bach that we were playing before. And when you listen to these two pieces of music that I'm going to play in a moment, I think what you need to imagine is being in the Madeleine, this great big, very grand church, and high above the west door is the organ, and these rather beautiful pieces of music sound gently, perhaps from a slightly unknowable source in the church. So these are two pieces. They're from a book of 12 she wrote, of 12 chorale preludes, and I'm going to play two of them. One is called, the first one is called Rorate Caeli, which I've now Googled, and that tells me that means literally heavens drop down dew, I believe from Isaiah. And the other piece I'm going to play is called Attende Domine, which is something that is part of the liturgy for Lent. Now, when we were playing the music before, Bach, for example, I spoke a little bit about the registration I used. And Bach didn't write down anything about what registration he would have used. So one uses one's musicianship and one's intellect and see how other people play it to choose a registration that's appropriate to the music. And you can sometimes just tell by the nature of how the music's written. Of course, some of it will be, for example, music to Easter. Music to Easter are joyous festivals in the Christian calendar, so the registration of the organ will probably be appropriate to that mood of those pieces, whereas Holy Week and Lent will be sort of more subdued. Now, in the music we've got here by Demessieux, she's given the registration, which I'll speak about a little bit, and that's also an opportunity to talk a little bit about some other aspects of the organ. So, if I read the book, what Demessieux says for this first piece I'm going to play, Rorate Caeli, is it says on one manual there's an 8-foot bourdon. On the second manual, there's a cornet, is the registration, and the pedal has a 16 and 8-foot bourdon. So she's written this registration based on the instrument that she had. One of the challenges with organ music is to try and find a registration and means of playing what a composer has written, in this case, on the instrument that one has at one's disposal. So this is effectively written in French. So the bourdon, 8-foot, that would be on an English organ. What it says here is a diapason. So these are the standard pipes. If you see a church organ in a church, the pipe you can usually see are probably diapason pipes. And the 8-foot refers to the pitch, and this is the standard pitch of the keyboards. And the 8-foot means that if you go to the lowest note on the keyboard, the length of that pipe is 8 foot long. And as you go up the keyboard, the pipes get progressively shorter, so therefore a higher pitch. And organs have arranged their ranks of pipes by pitch. So, as I say, on the keyboards, the standard pitch is an 8-foot pipe. But, for example, the middle keyboard here has these pipes also at 4 foot, so an octave higher, 2 foot, another octave higher, and 1 foot as well, octave higher again. And in fact, on the middle keyboard here, there's also a 16 foot, so that's an octave below the 8-foot pipe. And by choosing the registration, which are the buttons at the top here, some of which are illuminated at the moment, you put different combinations of pipes to play on any single note. So if I was to hold down one note on that keyboard, I could play it at a pitch of 16 foot, 8 foot, 4 foot, 2 foot, and 1 foot. So I could play 5 different octaves at once. And the keyboard is itself 5 octaves long, So potentially for C, in fact, we can play that over 10 octaves on this instrument. So we'll play using a diapason on the middle keyboard at 8 foot. And this piece of music has, the tune is played with this cornet stop. It's played on a different keyboard, a different manual, and this is tune carries above the accompaniment. Now, cornet is a quite complicated stop because it has a number of different pipes that play together, and these will be something around an 8 foot pitch, and then pipes that are probably at an octave and a third, an octave and a fifth above, which will bring out the harmonics of that basic 8 foot pitch, and that produces something that's called a cornet, and it's somewhat like a brass instrument. But these aren't reed pipes. Now, this particular instrument, it has a cornet stop. I don't particularly like it, but it happens to be on the same manual as the bourdon that I want to use for the manual. So I'm going to have to play this slightly differently than she suggests. So I'll use the middle keyboard to play the bourdon, and on the bottom keyboard I'll use a trumpet type stop. Probably, well, it's the best we can do with this instrument. The pedal board, as I've said before, it's 2.5 octaves. So here she wants a 16 and an 8 foot registration. So the 8 foot is the same pitch as the manuals, the bits with the hands, and then 16 foot is an octave lower as well. So that's what we're going to do there. I'm just running ahead to see what happens. And towards the end, actually, we'll change the registration. It tells us to change the registration. So some of the music's going on. I'm playing on the manuals, so no pedals. It tells us to add another 8 foot stop to the keyboard. And you'll hear it brings out a different aspect of music. And that's just on for a few bars, in fact 4 bars, and then you turn it off and go back to where you are. So she's telling us quite precisely how to do the registration. And the other piece we're going to play, Attende Domine, let's turn to that. That's a little bit more complicated, actually. If I can find the page, that will help. So she tells us what to do. So we're going to have a similar registration, so the 8 foot stop on, in this case, the top keyboard and the middle keyboard, but we'll couple those 2 keyboards together. And what that means on this particular instrument is that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play on the middle keyboard, but it's going to play the pipes that are also selected for the top keyboard. And if you go to older organs that are mechanically constructed, or they work mechanically, that is, there's a mechanical connection between the note you push and there's a series of levers and strings and so on, which pulls, which lets the wind into the pipe. And when you couple 2 keyboards, sometimes those move together. So you'll see the organist playing one keyboard and the notes on another keyboard will be moving apparently by themselves, but that's because they're coupled. So she tells us to couple these 2 together. So we'll head off with that and go on and on, just see what happens. And then at one point, about perhaps a third of the way through, we'll just go to the top keyboard. So we go to, therefore, effectively halve the registration, a different sound. And then we come back to both keyboards play together, but on the middle keyboard for a bit. And then in the final part, again, she tells us to change what we do. So my right hand will go up onto the top keyboard, so just playing one of these 8 foot pipes. And meanwhile, the music tells me to add a 16 foot, so a pitch lower, so an octave lower, to the middle keyboard. So we have this then contrast, and this brings out the tune. And there's also lots of other complications with bits to do with the pedals I have to turn off as well. So you'll see my hands moving around a bit. And the music is very, well, it's Lenten, it's very peaceful, again, it's quite meditative. But one's been quite busy on the instrument following the registration as well. Because of the different harmonic language of this music, sometimes you might not like it the first time you hear it, but it benefits from listening to it several times. But again, the organist is quite busy because there's quite a lot of stretches and we're holding notes, so we don't have to do a lot of finger substitutions. That's holding a note with one finger, and then fingers are needed elsewhere, so you change over to a different finger so the hand's free to go in a different direction. So it's quite busy, and you have to pay quite a lot of attention to get this apparently gentle and quite meditative piece of music. Okay, so I very much hope you enjoy these 2 pieces by Jeanne Demessieux. The health warning is ever. If you're going to listen to this, please don't listen to it using the speakers in your laptop, because it sounds absolutely awful. So really good headphones or hi-fi if you're going to listen to this recording. If you really want to get into her music, which I would strongly encourage you to do so, then you should get a proper recording and hear this music played properly. So once again, thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you enjoyed this.